Season 2 of Invincible is here. My god, does it hit hard. If you haven't seen Season 2 Episode 1 of Invincible yet, what am I doing with my hand? If you haven't seen Season 2 Episode 1 of Invincible yet, fantastic episode. Highly recommend going to go watch that first before watching this. Unfortunately, I will be talking about spoilers, but yeah, it is what it is. Without further ado, let's talk about Season 2 Episode 1 of Invincible and the impact of trauma. When we are first reintroduced to our universe's Mark again, he's back at the place where he and his dad Omni-Man had their last interaction. It kinda goes without saying that he is still coping with the trauma that transpired at the end of the last season. Jumping forward a little bit to give some context, when we see Mark talking to Eve, she asks him when the last time he went out as Invincible was, and he responds with, "Yesterday morning, but I was just flying around like an idiot." At this point in time, this response is a little hard to interpret, because we can see as the viewer that this is objectively not true, as he has done multiple good deeds for the betterment of the community. These include, but are not limited to, putting out a fire, stopping a car chase, taking an ambulance to the emergency. Quick shout out to this woman on the right here. Even though the car is now flying, she just accepts it and continues with the CPR. MVP move. My interpretation of his statement that he was just flying around like an idiot is that he has a level of survivor's guilt looming over him. To feel good about the good deeds he has done for the community wouldn't be right with the amount of destruction that he and his dad caused. Don't get me wrong, I'm definitely not saying Mark is to blame, but he's holding a lot of responsibility for what went down, and this is something I'm going to expand upon a little bit later in more detail. I think that it is in his nature to do good, but currently he doesn't feel like he deserves the credit for the good deeds he has done, and compared to the destruction that went down with his dad, it doesn't make up for it. Rewinding again in time, going back to the start of the scene, when we're reintroduced to Mark, we are hit with this beautiful track, Karma Police by Radiohead. Completely personal side note, I find it funny that I love finding the meanings of certain songs used at particular moments, even though English was my worst subject at school. I did a similar analysis of an Edge Runners track, so if you want to watch something else, go watch that. But anyway, back to Invincible. Tom York, the main vocalist and songwriter of Radiohead, explained that the main theme of the song was about stress and having people look at you in a certain malicious way. That last part, I think, hits really hard for Mark in particular. Mark is constantly battling the fear that he'll become just like his dad. Along with the paranoia of becoming like his dad, there is a level of insecurity of how the public will view him. They might look at him in a malicious way because of Omni-Man, and I don't think this is an unfounded worry of his. When he drops off the ambulance, just look at this woman here. Her arms are folded, we can make out a level of disdain, disapproval, contempt, whatever emotion you want to use. And we can make it out based on her facial expression. Yeah, sure, I might be looking a little deep into this, but I don't think it's an accident. I think this was intended. While York has emphasised in interviews that the song was humorous and not entirely serious, I do believe that it fits incredibly well for the trauma that Mark is dealing with. Just listen to how hard these lyrics hit with this scene. The lyrics, for a second there, I lost myself as Mark grits his teeth and has flashbacks, shows a level of PTSD until Mark calms himself down and assesses the situation. I think him calming himself down shows a level of maturity, as we can see both Magmaniac and Tether Tyrant retreat when Cecil's special forces get involved. I think that if Mark decided to brawl, it probably would have created more problems and damage than what was necessary. There's several more moments in the show that Mark has a level of PTSD, such as talking to Todd when he returns back to school. He zones out when Todd mentions that he heard his dad was an alright guy. Moving on, when he's talking to Amber, he says this.
I don't get to be sad. I'm part of the problem. I'm the reason all those people in Chicago died.
In this moment, the survivor's guilt is confirmed. He's blaming himself for all the people that died, and while Amber tells him that he didn't kill those people Omni-Man did, he retorts with, "But I didn't save them." Even Cecil doesn't want to bring him back to the field, stating that Mark has gone through an emotional tumble dryer and he needs to know that his head is stopped spinning before he gets him back in the game. While Mark thinks that he is ready to get back in the game, it's evident that he isn't, based on what went down with the Maulers. It's not so much the fight, but rather how Mark deals with the ending, saying, no, not again. Blaming himself for not saving the other people and even stating that not even the Maulers deserve this. It's Rex, of all people, to tell him that this wasn't his fault and that he did good. I know that Angstrom was planning a utopia, but no one else was aware of this, and calling in the additional Maulers definitely sealed his fate. With everything we've discussed, the trauma that Mark has gone through, the PTSD and the paranoia for how the wider public view him, it's obvious that Mark wants to do good, but the impact of the trauma that went down is obviously impacting him mentally. He can't be the best version of himself while he's being impacted by the level of shit he's gone through. I'm going to be really interested to see how he manages this. I'm assuming it's going to be expanded upon in the further episodes. With everything we have discussed, the trauma that Mark has gone through, the PTSD and the paranoia for how the wider public view him, I can only imagine the level of emotion Invincible felt. When the Immortal basically said he doesn't trust him, when all Mark is trying to do is do good. And yeah, I definitely don't blame the Immortal with the level of shit he has gone through, so I think it makes sense to end this video on that scene.
Cecil thinks you're on our side. I'm not so sure. I'll be watching you.